Hey guys, Edward here from Edward79, the mixed content creator. Now, there are lots of different metals out there, from the ones you probably know about a lot to the ones you've probably never even heard of. But, have you ever wondered, how do the different melting points of metals stack up? Well, want to know more, because this video is part 1 of ranking metals from lowest to highest melting points. So without further ado, let's get to the rankings. First up on this list is Mercury. Mercury is highly toxic and can cause a lot of nasty stuff really fast. There is, however, one weird thing about it. It's a liquid at room temperature. The reason for this is low melting point, as Mercury has the lowest melting point of any metal, meaning that even at room temperature, it's still a liquid and only crystallizes into a solid in much colder temperatures. Like I said, Mercury has the lowest melting point of any metal, with a melting point of only negative 37.89 degrees Fahrenheit or negative 38.83 degrees Celsius. Next up on this list is Gallium. Gallium is probably even weirder than Mercury, because while it's solid, if it's placed on, let's say, a table, once you put it in your hand, it melts. Why? The answer again comes back down to melting point, as while the melting point of gallium is above room temperature, it's below body temperature, meaning that even the heat radiating from your hand is enough to melt the metal. And unlike Mercury, it's relatively non-toxic, so it can be played with safely. Gallium also has the second lowest melting point of any metal, melting at 85.58 degrees Fahrenheit or 29.76 degrees Celsius. Coming up after gallium is rubidium. Like most alkali metals, rubidium is violently reactive, and when exposed to air, it could very well catch fire out of nowhere. And if placed in water, it can also pseudo-explode, spewing the container's contents all over the place. But despite its reactivity, there are elements more reactive than that, like cesium, which straight up explodes the moment it touches water. Rubidium is the first metal to have a melting point above 100 Fahrenheit, with a melting point of 103.1 degrees Fahrenheit or 39.48 degrees Celsius. Next up on this list is indium. Indium is one of the rarest elements on Earth, occurring at only 0.1 parts per million in Earth's crust. Its uses span a wide variety, mostly electrical components such as thermistors and photoconductors, but also in mirrors, low-melting alloys, touchscreens, and solar panels. And if you're wondering for some reason, yes, it can be cut with a knife, as it's the softest metal that isn't an alkali metal. And it also reacts with oxygen at higher temperatures to form indium oxide. Indium's melting point is relatively low, melting at only 313.9 degrees Fahrenheit or 156.6 degrees Celsius. Next on this list is lithium. Now, if you've seen my ranking metals from least to most dense part 1 video, I touched base on the fact that lithium is one of the few metals less dense than water. And yes, lithium is one of the few metals less dense than water, with sodium and potassium being other metals that are less dense than water. And believe it or not, lithium is actually used as medication for mood disorders, such as bipolar disorder. Lithium has one of the lowest melting points of any metal on this list, with a melting point of only 357 degrees Fahrenheit or 180.5 degrees Celsius. Coming up after lithium is tin. Its symbol, Sn, comes from the Latin word stannum, which means tin, so tin's Sn should be no surprise. Tin is also shockingly soft, soft enough to be bent by hand with relatively little effort. Tin is also combined with copper to form bronze, and while it's not rare, it's not common either, occurring at only 2 parts per million in the Earth's crust. And while you might think cans are made of tin, They're actually made of steel coated with tin to prevent corrosion. Tin has a relatively low melting point, melting at 449.5 degrees Fahrenheit or 231.9 degrees Celsius. Next up is one of the most poisonous elements on the entire periodic table, thallium. Thallium is extremely toxic and can kill you in even small amounts. Pure thallium looks a lot like tin, but it quickly discolors once it's exposed to oxygen. And because it's so poisonous, it's used for almost nothing, except for electronics and a few other products. It used to be used in rat poison, but was discontinued due to posing a bigger health risk than most poisons. Thallium has a low melting point, melting at only 578.9 degrees Fahrenheit or 303.8 degrees Celsius. Next up on this list is another toxic metal, cadmium. Its toxicity is hard to exaggerate, and it's one of 5 main toxic metals featured on this entire list, with the other 4 being arsenic, lead, and the aforementioned mercury and thallium. Yes, it's in batteries, but it's also prevalent in fertilizers, cigarette smoke, plastics, and coal. Cadmium is actually relatively rare, occurring anywhere from 0.1 to 0.5 parts per million in the crust. Cadmium also has a low melting point, melting at only 610 degrees Fahrenheit or 321.1 degrees Celsius. Next up on this list is the notoriously toxic metal that is lead. Although you won't notice its effects right away, it is damn toxic and causes brain damage. Lead was used in everything back then, from paints and pipes to bullets and more. And believe it or not, many believe the fall of the Roman Empire was in part due to too many people getting lead poisoning, because Rome's gloriously white paints got their hue from lead. Lead also has a low melting point for metal, melting at 621.5 degrees Fahrenheit or 327.5 degrees Celsius. Rounding up part 1 is zinc. As an essential trace mineral your body needs, good sources of zinc include spinach, oysters, beans, cashews, dark chocolate, almonds, mushrooms, pumpkin seeds, Greek yogurt, and meat. But going to zinc, the metal, zinc is the 4th most widely used metal in industry after copper, iron, and aluminum. And it's used in a lot of different products. It's rarer than both iron and aluminum, occurring at only 0.75 parts per million, only slightly more common than copper. Zinc also has a relatively low melting point, with a melting point of 7.872 degrees Fahrenheit or 419.5 degrees Celsius.